My time coming, know it is, cause I didn't pray for it. I'm in a suit day and night, yeah, I done slaved for it. I never knew that if I rap, I could get paid for it. State to state, different cities with the gang touring. He ain't a beast, if he play, I had the gang storm him. It's on the love, if you my brother, we got the same story. Yeah, what you know about a kick, though? You wasn't with me, I was running.
All right, what's up, people? It's your boy Smith, man. It's public comment. You know how to reach me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, on Twitter. You know, the same old taglines, nothing changed. Really just trying to dig in deep. Like I said earlier, set the world on fire. We're just doing some things differently. If you're new to the show, welcome. I started this whole public comment a couple years ago because I just seen how things work. The name actually came from a city council meeting when they jammed me up. So I was like, you know what? Let me speak on this whole public comment. Took it from there, made it that, and just trying to be an avenue of resources and programs and folks that provide, you know, some form of, you know, motivation, inspiration, and education for the people. You know what I'm saying? So through it all, I think it's been like 3 years now, just trying to grow organically and provide some different things. And as you see on the screen, to my right, we got a good brother on here. He's gonna start this new series I got. It's called Black Men, um, Excellence in Action. And you know, if you've seen the show over the summer and seen the series, our summer series Black Women 2023, it was just time that I thought to provide flowers and make sure that we pay homage to the women that are here now. Now, you know, we could talk and celebrate women in the past, the Black women, the ancestors that did that work, and that's wonderful. We need to. But what about the women that's here today, present, like in our mix, that we can put our hands on, that we can speak to, and that we can learn from, especially with, you know, younger Black women who may not have that in their particular environment. So we did that. It was awesome. Had some wonderful people on there, including my most beautiful. And then after that, kind of got to where we are now. And just real quick before we start this, I just want to give a little bit of background, if I could, Mon. And this is this. We hosted a series at the local community college last year where we did Friday night movies. And one of our movies was Judah and the Black Messiah. And after the movie, you know, I always make it a point to like engage questions to make people think past the movie, because I know you do that same with your movie critiques. And so I asked this one question specifically. I said, you know, explain. And now the crowd was about 20 people, it was mixed. And I said, well, give me one question or give me one word that describes Fred Hampton, right? Go around the room, everybody saying powerful, strong, you know, all it, you know, rebellious, all these things. They didn't say the one word I didn't think they would, and that's love. And I challenged them on that because if you go through the lineage of Black men, and our time didn't start and change here. Let's put that out there. If you go through it and you see the men that try to change the construct of this land that we're occupying right now illegally, all these adjectives were put to these Black men. Every word: mean, evil, terrorist, you know, ignorant, intimidating, violent, all of it. Never love, never love. But if you look back at Huey P. and you look at Marcus Garvey and you look at Booker T. Washington, you look at W.E.B. Du Bois, you look at all of these people, and you have to have an incredible amount of love for some folks to change the world when you put your life on the line, because that's what you're doing when you try to change the world and you mess with people's financial, you know, their economy, right? And the only connection you have is the color of your skin. You know what I'm saying? So with all of that being said, we had to do this. I had to do this to make sure my mind is right, to make sure I'm occupying this space properly. And that's why we're having this series, because I need the young brothers that's out there, these young men who I see every day when I coach football, when I'm in the schools, when I'm in the halls, when I'm wherever I'm at. You know, a lot of them, not most, just there's some that just don't have that one cat in their life to get them right, to say, bro, come here, man. Let me talk to you. Let me give you some of this free game. Let me give you some options. I ain't gonna talk to you, but I'm gonna give you some options and let you plant that seed and let you harvest that. You know what I'm saying? So with all of that said, let's get to the show. It's public comment. It's your boy Smith. My first guest, I met, y'all don't know how long I've been chasing this cat. The dude is super busy. We go way back.
Sure.
But it was imperative me. It was on my mind that he had to be the first person to start this show off right, because he don't know this, but he's one of the cats that kind of opened my eyes to some of the differences and the options that can be out there when it comes to young black men, when it comes to, HBCUs. So I admire that. I hold him in high esteem. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my man, Shimon Walton, Supervisor Shimon Walton, to say, Shimon, what's up with you, dog?
Man, what's going on, man? First of all, Smith, I just want everybody to give you your flowers and give you your props for setting up this platform. You're doing your thing, Mr. Edward Russell, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here to have a conversation, so we can try to touch some of these young folks and really demonstrate that there are opportunities out there. And if you focus, you can accomplish whatever you want to do. So thanks for having me on this first installment, and looking
Yes,
forward to
sir.
the conversation.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, bro. All that same you just said to me back at you. Before we get into the conversation, what I think the thing that it never surprised me, because I know how you got with the word game when we used to ride around in the whip trying to sell those tapes and stuff. So talk about the book, man. I think that's huge. I think that's huge. I didn't bring it up. It's not in the questions, but I think that's a great place to start, man. Talk about the book.
So the book that I wrote, from juvenile hall to city hall, really just highlights the first maybe 35 plus years of my life, up to the point where I talk about growing up in the projects, and then moving to Vallejo, being new to Vallejo, California, and really making a lot of mistakes as a young person, getting locked up, raised by a single mom, being from public housing, having kids at during my teenage years, being expelled from school, and really just having a resume that is supposed to set you up for death or a lifetime of incarceration. And so I talk about all of that in the book, but then I talk about the things that allowed me to make changes to become someone who went from being locked up, growing up, and all those other negative aspects that I talked about, to eventually becoming the president of the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco.
Say
And
that.
just really through mentorship, of course, through God and having a strong mom, I was able to make some changes that put me in a position to be in this place. And so from juvenile hall to city hall, your resume can change. It's really about someone who made certain mistakes, but didn't let that define them. And I
Right.
want young people to know that where you are today, the place you may be in right now, that is an obstacle you can overcome if you focus on certain things. And you see in the background, I have my Morris Brown College background. And I did that on purpose. One, because Morris Brown College really saved my life. And I know a lot of people say things that are very cliche-ish, but my mentor, Fillmore Graham, after my last stint in juvenile hall, I had an opportunity to go to a youth leadership conference in 1992 with Mr. Graham, some other youngsters from Vallejo, and we had the opportunity to attend the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated Youth Conference at their biannual conclave. And just what I saw with young black men, what they were doing, the intelligence they had, the opportunities they had, and it looked like they were just running the city. And so I asked all these young black men, what did they do to get in that position? And the number one answer from everybody was education, focus on education. And so from there, I really changed my life, because my end goal at that point was to make sure that I was at somebody's college, somebody's historically black college, that next fall. And that was the real turning point in my life.
Man, bruh, there's so much stuff to unpack there, and then I don't want to take this too much time, but just education is freedom, right? The more you know, the further you can go, the more doors you open. You know what I'm saying? And then I just want to touch on the one of the facts that, like I said, you inspired me and kind of opened my eyes to some things. Shaman invited me and a couple of other cats to his homecoming in 1999, and that was my first trip ever to Atlanta. And let me tell you something, man. When I stepped foot on that campus, I believe it was the Saturday, and man, it was packed with wall to wall black folks, and we was eating, we was breaking bread, and it was just phenomenal. And me being from East Oakland, I never seen anything like that where like cats just be together, ain't no beef, ain't no strife. We just doing our thing. Everybody's doing their own little thing, but we all just there for one. So, man, thank you for letting me tag along to that, and it opened my eyes so much, man. And the book. I'll be honest with you. I didn't read the book. I bought it, and then I actually regifted it to like a couple days later. I regifted it to Golden Hills, the school up there in Fairfield that you know a lot about. You know what I'm saying? Side note, Mr. Walton he brought me and my other boy in to talk to some of the cats back at Golden Hills. That's why I gave them that book, because it meant so much to me. So, right quick, where can they find the book at, bro?
So you can go to Amazon.com, type in From Juvenile Hall to City Hall, and you're gonna be able to pick it up like that real easy.
Amazon, go get it. Cool, bro. Hey, the book, go get that, y'all. And I got to give me another one so I can read it. So
sure.
let's this is, I guess this is part of the book. You know what I'm saying? If you got into it that deep, but again, just trying to provide some inspiration and some shed some light, right, on the young cats that might need to hear something. So if we can talk about like childhood, your upbringing, family dynamics, like how do you build friendship, right? Because we got this thing right now, like, we cut out squares, in your circle, right? But what if it's that square that might be the cat? You know what I'm saying? So like talk about you coming up, man. Talk about young Shaman and his navigation.
For sure. I mean, Smith, we moved around a lot. And I was raised primarily just by my mom. I haven't seen my father, just to give you an example, since I was 12 years old. And we moved around a lot, but my mom always wanted to try to get me out of certain environments. That was always her goal. And for me, I was a very mischievous, I was always interested in learning and knowledge, but that also caused me to also make certain decisions that at times weren't the right decision for me as a young person, because I always wanted to explore. I always wanted to learn about what was out there. So like we know, when you're raising a child, there's two ways you can learn. You can learn from experience, or you can learn from watching other people and what they do, right? So if that oven is hot, that stove is hot, if somebody tell me not to touch it, I'm gonna touch it. I'm gonna get burnt first, right? That's the way I grew up. I'm gonna make certain mistakes. I'm gonna accept certain challenges rather than learning from experiences of other people. So suspended a lot elementary school years. I was always that young person who finished my work first. Really was quick to learn certain things, but that also led for me to be bored in school, and particularly bored just within the classroom settings. As you probably know, a lot of us grew up where we didn't have Black teachers. I had 2 Black teachers growing up my whole preschool through 12th grade experience, and one of them was just for a semester because they came to the school later. So it was an English teacher, and then I had a history teacher in the 8th grade, Mr. Henley. And so I said all that to say that I got a lot of trouble in school. And because I moved around a lot and came to new communities a lot, I got in a lot of fights as a youngster. I was an angry young man. I was quick to fight all the time. I had a smart mouth. I would talk a lot of stuff. And so, growing up in Hunters Point, San Francisco, and then moving to College Park, Vallejo, if you're going to run your mouth, you're going to have to be able to back it up. And a lot of issues come that way. So a lot of fights in school, a lot of rebellion with my teachers, because I really just didn't feel that anybody saw me and understood where I come from. So a lot of trouble in school, which leads to being suspended, which leads to a lot of free time outside of the classroom, hanging on the block with my partners. And we started off real young, just doing dumb stuff, stealing cars. Then we started selling dope, and one thing led to another, escalates, and then we start getting in trouble with the law because of some of those decisions. And
let me, if I could, man, because I don't want to lose the train of thought. I'm trying to write it down. And what you're sharing, man, like, folks, this is authentic. Young folks, you ain't the only one. You know what I'm saying? You ain't the only one. But you talked about moving, right? And so when I talk to young folks, like, I tell them, like, normalize what your normal is. You know what I'm saying? when you was moving, did that seem normal to you? Did you think like other people didn't move?
I'm gonna tell you something crazy, Smith, because I didn't really realize how either devastating or how much of that has a factor on your life till I became an adult, right? So because I moved around a lot growing up, I went to 7 different elementary schools, just to give you an example. So for me, I have the gift of goodbye, right? If I don't like something, if I ain't feeling something, it's quick for me to go on. And I think
Right.
that all goes back to those experiences, moving all the time, going from place to place,
Wow.
and then being like, well, shoot, I don't have to be here. I can move. And I think
Hmm.
that's affected me in a lot of things that I do as I get older. So to answer your question, thought it was normal. When I got
Yeah.
elected to the Board of Education in San Francisco, when I was working with young people, I started to realize one, because even when I got to Vallejo, right, a lot of cats, a lot of my friends, they went to the same elementary school the whole time. Then they went to a junior high school that their brothers or their older sisters or their cousins went to.
Hmm.
I didn't have that experience. Most of my family was in San Francisco, and my most stable environment was when I got to Vallejo in the 6th grade and lived there until I graduated from high school. But prior to that, 7 elementary schools. So I thought moving around was
Wow.
normal. Even in Vallejo, we stayed in several different spots
Hmm.
and moved around a lot. But we had the stability of the community of Vallejo. So yes, I
Hey,
thought it was normal and realized later that that's not how it's supposed to be.
right. But it may not have to be that way, but that's the normal, right? And sometimes what I try to tell young cats is embrace it. You know what I'm saying? It may not be somebody else's normal, but that's my normal, right?
Sure.
Um, but
But,
that's
let
crazy that
me just say this real quick though, Smith,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it, you know, everybody can't deal with that many transitions in life. It's not normal to have that many transitions, that many moves, and to be able to be stable and to be able to understand your place in life and within your skin. That's a hard way to live.
Hmm.
It didn't affect me the way that it would affect certain people. It most certainly affected me in terms of how I behaved, how I always thought I had to prove myself, how I always had to show up and think I was better than other people in certain aspects because it was just me and all my family was somewhere else.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you know, you're a parent, I'm a parent, we grandparents. That's not what we want for our young people, right? We want them to
Right.
have a stable environment so they know where their next meal is coming from. They know what opportunity and what school they're going to go to next year and
Hmm.
what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. That's what normal is.
And I agree with you 1,000%, and that's why we're doing this. You know what I'm saying? And then also what I heard in that was that anger. I was talking to little bro. I think he was like 5th grade, and he was telling me he was like, "Yo, Russell," they call me Russ. I tell him don't call me Mister. He was like, "Yo, Russ." He was like, "I was about to get into a fight at lunch, but I didn't because I know I got anger issues." And I stopped him and I said, "Whoa, man," because you had mentioned, you was angry, right? And it came out in certain ways, however it manifested itself. But I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I said, "Who told you got anger issues?" He was like, the adults or whoever. And I was like, "Well, hold on, man. If you got anger issues, you got love issues. You
Hmm.
just can't have one issue when it comes to emotions. We have all of these emotions." You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So I thought it was very profound when you said that, like, all of this moving kind of caused me to be upset a little bit, right? And then come out some way, which was the byproduct was sometimes being suspended. As a former, elected official on the Board of Education, is suspension the answer?
Well, no, I mean, it's funny that you asked that because I was expelled from Vallejo City's Unified School District 3 separate occasions,
Wow.
and one of them I bought a firearm on my way to school, so that goes without saying. 100% hands down, 100% agree with. But when we were growing up, it just seemed like every black male who had a lot of fights or who had different altercations within the school system, suspension was first and then expulsion. When I got to San Francisco Unified School District Board of Education, we had a policy that provided alternatives to suspension
Mhm.
because not only were students get suspended for fighting and things that were of a violent nature, but there was a policy called willful defiance, which really meant if I'm a teacher, I can suspend you for anything outside of a violent altercation. And so we saw a disproportionate number of black people Latino people, Pacific Islanders being suspended from school for things that everybody may have been doing. And the more time you spend outside the classroom, obviously, the less opportunity you have to learn and the more opportunity you have to make mistakes. So, suspension is not the answer for every infraction. And that's what we have to get, not only just our educators to understand, but even our policymakers to understand that there are things that provide a better opportunity for a young person to learn from a bad decision.
I agree.
Being expelled from school was not what saved me. It's not what helped me. In fact, a lot of other things that I got into because we were home from school versus being in a setting where we could receive an education. And so as a member of the Board of Education, I really fought against some situations where they tried to expel some folks for things and reasons that I didn't agree with, and was able to help some of my colleagues understand at times that that was not the route for this young person. Because the more time we spend outside the classroom, the worse the outcome could be, and typically is the situation.
Hey, my mother used to say, idle mind is the devil's playground. You know what I'm saying? So once you suspend a kid, you just giving them time, like you said, to open up other options to doing things that they ain't got no business doing. You know what I'm saying? So definitely appreciate your work there. I'm with the faction of I prefer, and I think some of what I'm about to say goes to some of my growing up, and that's the lack of parent participation in the school. Even as a parent, I didn't know how to participate in school. You know what I'm saying? And before we get on to where we're trying to go, where is that level? If you had to say, I mean, because you was in that role as on the Board of Education in San Francisco, what is the parent participation level? If we had to put a number to it, is it 30%, 50%, 70% of Black parents participating properly in school and knowing, you know what I'm saying, who the school board president is, who the superintendent, any of those things? What do you think that is?
Well, let me just say as caveats to that question, and the reason why I say that is because there are certain populations of people that are so worried about survival that have to be at work, that have to make sure they're doing the things to take care of the home. So they don't necessarily have the same opportunities as people with means to do extra things that, when I was growing up, and you know this, I had a house key at 6 years old, right? My mom, she had to be at work. So I had to get to school and get home. Now, my mom participated as much as she could. So to answer your question, though, the level of participation really depends on income, really depends on station in class. In some case, that is reflective of the race having less opportunity to participate. Because the number one thing I tell all families of every demographic, the number one indicator of a successful school is the parent and caregiver participation. And we know that. And it's not high enough in the Black community. It's not high enough in low income communities. And we got work to do in that aspect. But again, are you going to blame a parent for having to go to work and not being able to be at the after school program every day and bring instruments, or be able to come to every football game and baseball game like some parents have been afforded the opportunity to do? And those are the things we try to continue to work on. But that's why we have after school programs. Yeah. That's why we have community centers, things that help the parent and participate as part of the village to help the parent so that the young person could be successful.
Man, to have the privilege to participate in school. I thank you for that. And I agree with everything you said. And I just want to add this before I get to the next part. And I said this to our local city council. I've said this to our local board of supervisors. I said this to the local school board. Like, to your point, people are in survival mode. People are taking care, especially if they're single parents. And you don't need to be a woman to be a single parent. Let me just put that out there. We have single parents. We have single grandparents. We have single foster parents. We have single everything. We need, as a society and as boards, to offer different dates for these meetings. They can't be at 6 o'clock on Tuesday all the time. They need to be opened up for different dates at different times, especially Saturday mornings when people have the time. And I will say this, and I will say this to the end. Stop having the city council meetings at City Hall. Most black folks and Latinos think that's the next thing to this to police station. How about we have a city council meeting or a school board meeting at the park or at the mall or somewhere where people are comfortable at? Stop making them feel uncomfortable and not welcome in these particular environments. That's not at Chumon. That's just at our local governments across the board in general, because we got to be able to
We
participate.
could do a whole session on that conversation.
Absolutely. Absolutely, bruh. Now we done been through the upbringing. Talk about the transition into manhood and how you had to navigate from being, moving around and dealing with those emotions to now I'm in manhood. Now I go to college. Now I do these things. I'm trying to do this. What's that look like, bruh?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned briefly is I had children at age 16 and 17 years old, right? So even during a time period where I was still going in and out of juvenile hall and still making certain young mistakes, I still had this other responsibility of being a parent. And so I think it was a little bit of what pushed me when I saw that opportunity and went to that youth leadership conference. I think that also helped me be able to make a transition much faster than I would have without having young people that I was responsible for. So I want to say, when I landed at Morris Brown College my freshman year, I knew that I had to graduate, get a college degree, and get back home because I had some people that I had to take care of. And that was my focus and my goal. And so the pressure of adulting most certainly was probably on me a little bit more than your average person who goes to school, because I was responsible for the lives of two people and making sure that I didn't repeat the cycle that I was most certainly about to do of my father and other people's fathers and other people's parents that continue to make mistakes throughout their life.
Did I lose you, bro?
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. No. Hey, and that's a phenomenal statement all in itself. Having that accountability to, like you said, break these cycles, do something different, right? And be a game changer. That's what you are. And I will say this about the accountability factor. You don't necessarily have to be a parent to have accountability. If you have younger siblings that you're responsible for, you know what I'm saying? You have that accountability. You have that responsibility. And again, see, that's why I want you on here, man. That's why I needed you on here, because now we're trying to have young cats be in a position. Let's just say he's the older brother. He's the older brother. He's got a couple siblings. You know what I'm saying? And he's the man of the house. He's making these changes. You know what I'm saying? And then how do you navigate doing that in your 17, 18, 19 into a career, trying to get a career, not a job. I'm not talking about working at Chick-fil-A. I'm talking about getting a career. What does that look like? How do we help that situation? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think young people, need to start understanding their power and understanding that most great movements, most things that change the history, and most things that, if we look back in time where you see real change, was started with young people. And so I think young people need to really understand their power, understand that they've been responsible for movements in this country and across the world that have led to so much effective change for all of us. But the real thing, when we talk about the responsibility of, you got to know who you are, you got to know what you're good at, you got to know what you want to do, and you kind of got to try to figure that out as soon as possible. There are times where, I talk to young people and I'm like, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. Okay, well, you don't know what you want to do, but do you know if you want to be successful or not? Do you know if you want to succeed or not? Well, if you know you want to succeed, we got to start working on some kind of plan, some kind of short-term goals. The importance of having a goal is, I can't magnify that enough, because I don't care if it's you trying to lose weight. I don't care if it's you trying to stop a bad habit. I don't care if it's, you trying to find a good career. Once you say, this is what I'm focused on, and you start taking the steps to achieve it, that's how you get success. And so the same thing goes with deciding on your career goals and your career options. But if you are a young person who doesn't necessarily know what you want to do today, it's still important that you work on something that's building your skills. Because we started this conversation talking about education and the importance of education, but I would really say it's more so the importance of knowledge, the importance of learning as much information as you can, because the more information you have, the more opportunities you know and understand, the less likely you are to make certain mistakes. You and I are confronted with challenges all the time. We go back to the fact when we were younger, we might have responded to a situation different. But because I know I have certain opportunities, I can respond to something different because I know that at the end of the day, if this don't work out on this end, I know that I can go in another direction and pivot. And so it's the same thing when you trying to pick a career. Focus on something you love, focus on something you like, and you got to take the steps to get there. And the one thing I really want to say, because I know I'm going in circles,
say it. No, you ain't. You good. You good.
It's 100% about the work always. A lot of people come to me, particularly young people, and say, "How did you get on the board of supervisors? How did you become an executive director? How did you get here? How did you get there?" And I tell them, "It's about the work." Well, yeah, no, but I mean, like, what did you do to get? It's about the work. Well, no, but I mean, like, how? It's about the work. I wasn't elected to the board of supervisors until 20 years after I graduated from undergrad. So obviously, there were so many things I did in that 20-year time period to even get to the point where I would want to run for office and where community would even think we could be successful in doing that. So it's about that work. It's about those steps every day, day in, day out. And sometimes that vision that you have for yourself, it might not happen in year one. It might not happen in year 2, year 5. It might not happen until 20 years later. But if you look at the goals that you put in front of you and achieve those milestones and work to achieve those milestones, then that's how you become successful. And that's how you transition from someone who, may be in an education setting, in a skills-based program, et cetera. Still got to focus on what you want to do after you achieve those goals. A college degree is one thing, but then what's the next steps after that?
I always say that. What's the next step?
An entry-level position is one thing, but what's the next steps after that?
I will say this, bro. I heard one of your Instagram posts where you was talking about goals and having goals and setting goals. I like to tell young folks, you know what I'm saying? You got to figure out what your success looks like, right? Because I know growing up on my block, there was no county supervisor, there was no chancellor, there wasn't none of this. You know what I'm saying? So my success was, gold rims and gold chains. So young folks, we gotta figure out what that success looks like. And then to Supervisor's point, you got to create this blueprint, like Dr. King said. Get this blueprint, understand and navigate where you go. Just like you got a map to figure out how to get from one place to another. You know what I'm saying? You got to get this map, this blueprint, so you can figure out what it is you're trying to do, the things you like to do. And then like the supervisor said, it's okay to pivot because it might take some time to do some things, you know what I'm saying? But, that's all part of life. And it's easy for me and the supervisor to sit here and say that because, we've been there and done it. But again, we want to let you know that is achievable. Some things take time. I know we live in this instant oatmeal society where, everything on, social media looks like, bam, it happened just that quick. Let me tell you something. In real life, young cats, you got to put some work in. Like the man said, you got to put that work in. You got to put that hustle in. You're going to have to sacrifice some things, sacrifice some time. You're going to have to sacrifice some friends. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody ain't on your same level and everybody ain't got your same success in mind. You know what I'm saying? So figure out what your success is, and kind of go from there. Before we move, is this what you always wanted to do, was be a supervisor?
So, as a youngster, I knew I wanted to be in politics.
Cool.
That was always something that I used to talk about. And I thought the route had to be to become an attorney and then become an elected official. But as I got older, started working in government, started working in nonprofit and having certain experiences, I realized for me, what's more important for me was to learn about governmental systems, how they work, how money flows from the federal government to the state government to local government. And so that instead of going to law school, I went and got my master's in public administration. But I can remember, this is a true story too, and I still keep in touch through Facebook. I had a teacher when I was a senior, and she had us all write an essay about, our high school years. And so I wrote about my high school years being full of turmoil, all the trouble I used to get into, and just being blessed and excited to be graduating and having an opportunity to go on to college. And she sent it in, and they published it in the Times Herald in Vallejo. And in that essay, I wrote that I wanted to become a congressman. So just to give you an example, that is something that's been on my mind, being elected official. I do not want to be a congressman anymore. So let me just say that local politics has always been my thing. And I think it's more important to focus on that. And we can have a whole session about that. But I knew at a young age, this is what I wanted to do. But again, as we talked about, the goal should always be the same, but the plan may change along the way. There are certain things that I had to change. I mean, I taught in court school, I taught in high school, I taught in different settings, was an academic director, program coordinator, executive director. I've had several different types of jobs along the way that got me to the goal.
Right. And that's important to know that it's not one road to success. You know what I'm saying? It's many. You just got to sometimes travel them, and figure them out. I got to say this, man, before I got you said, you want to be in government, and know how government works, man. I just got to say that put a chill on me, because I think I just don't hear that enough. And that's why you needed to be the first person on here, man, because you know what I'm saying? I'm like this. I'm with the movement. I'm with change. We need more bros that look like us, that sound like us, that have that lived experience in position to control, to create policy. You know what I'm saying? We can sit here and I want to say this. I want to make sure we need people to protest. We need people to march. We need people to fight the system. We need every simple avenue that we can. But at the same time, we need people in positions to create the policy, because the word is the one that's going to change some things. So I'm glad you made that decision, Mon. Dude, appreciate that. That's powerful. Get in the government, folks.
I always tell people, everybody has a role in this fight for justice, right? Your role may not be the same as my role, but we all have a role. And so, to your point, some people need to be in elected office. Some people need to be the folks that are protesting and agitating. And sometimes it's all in one, right? Sometimes you doing all of that at the same time. Some people need to be educating our young people in the classroom. Some people need to be working in the community and guiding young folks to the right direction. Some people need to be football coaches, baseball coaches, basketball coaches. Everybody plays a role into making sure that our young people and our race and our community is successful. And my role may be different than your role, but your role is not any less important.
Say that, bro, man. I couldn't have said it better. As we close out, man, and again, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man. This is all encompassing. So you answer it how you feel. And if you don't want to answer, don't answer. But I'm just like, because of the sensationalism, and like I said earlier, like society not putting that word love in front of black men at all, ever. And just how we're depicted, how we're sensationalized on social media, on TV and radio, whatever else, how do you see us now in society? What does the future look like for black men under the current construct that we're in? And then what is your role in moving us forward? And I know that's a lot. So again, I want you to dissect that and answer it to, to where you're comfortable at.
Well, I mean, they use sensationalism to discredit and to provide opportunities to mistreat black people, particularly black people in high places, all the time. I give you some examples of sensationalism, and even me with the media, right? So
I know.
I have, I wrote legislation to author reparations task force, and we were having a big hearing in February. Went to Colombia with some of the friends, got on the airplane, had mechanical issues, we almost took off, had to go back and had to stay overnight, got stuck and couldn't make it to a big hearing that we were having around reparations because of mechanical errors while I was out of the country. What did the newspaper write? Supervisor Walton pushes reparations back, partying in Colombia. Now that's sensationalism at its finest, right? You
At
know,
its best.
one, they didn't say my plane got delayed because of mechanical errors. They didn't say it was impossible for me to make it, but this was the headline that they wanted to say.
Mm-hmm.
Sensationalism, try to discredit me as a leader, as a black leader, as a black man. You know, I did a comedy show. I've been working on comedy lately, and did a whole set of comedy and said one joke about white people. What did the newspaper headline say the next day? Supervisor pokes fun at white people in comedy debut. Now, what they didn't know was they just made me now famous for comedy because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people didn't know I was doing comedy, didn't see it. So what they thought was going to be negative turned into something positive. I just had to say that to say, one, don't be concerned about what people say about you and what people write about you. And if you want to be in any role that has leadership attached to it, people are going to talk about you. People are going to make up stuff about you because most certainly there are so many people who want to be in that role in that space. So going back to your question, the sensationalism is used to bring people down in so many different arenas of life, and or it's also just used to make money, sell papers, to sell platforms, etc. There's really no such thing anymore as real news that captures the essence of facts, what has happened, and what we need to do about it. News used to really be about, let me get information to people so they can know what's going on in their communities, in the world. Now everything has to have some kind of drama attached to it, has to have something that sensationalizes or providing a person's opinions. So journalism is going by the wayside.
Right.
My responsibility is, we talk about it a little bit all through this conversation. I can say cliches like the more you know, the more you owe. Like Graham used to say, my goal is to make sure that if a young person sees it, then they know, they understand they can be it. So my job is to expose people to all the opportunities that exist for them, whether it be from a workforce standpoint, whether it be from an educational standpoint, whether it be from a leadership standpoint. You talked about the fact that what you saw as a young person, folks we might have thought was successful or we glorified was sitting on gold ones, or may have gotten resources a certain way. I talk about the fact that that's what I saw growing up until I got that exposure going to that youth leadership conference in Atlanta. My paradigm didn't shift. So I said all that to say our job is to really expose. Just think about it, Smith. Just think if I would have went to Atlanta, Georgia, if I would have gone, my mentor would have killed me. Sam would have went. If I would have gone to Atlanta at 12, if I'd have gone to Atlanta at 13, I didn't go until I was 17, and thank God that one experience did it for me. But just think if I grew up seeing that on a daily basis. Mr. Graham used to always talk about it. My Uncle Corey went to college first. He used to talk about it. But without seeing that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that exposure piece is so important. We have to expose young people to all the opportunities that exist and do it as early as we can. That's my job. That's my goal. That's my focus. And also getting them to understand that whatever happens in their lives at this moment, wherever they think they are today, particularly if it's not in a good space, that is not determine where your future is going to end.
Say that. Say that. Exposure, people. Exposure. You know what I'm saying? The great Frederick Douglass said it's easier to build strong boys than repair broken men. Let that one sink in. You know what I'm saying? I think it's powerful. I think what you're doing, you're definitely doing the exposure work, sir. Yeah, and at a young age, like getting them cats, and that's why I'm doing this, Supervisor Walton, is to make sure that the young cats in my organization see cats like you that look like them, because I'm a true believer in the mirror. Reflection image is a very, very big deal. You have to see somebody that looks like you. And I say this a lot, like, most of the time it's not the message, it's the messenger.
Sure.
In our mentoring, we provide free math tutoring. And one of my young brothers, he wasn't doing too good in math. I put him in front of 11th and the 12th grader, young bruh, and they taught him well. And now that boy got straight A's. So don't tell me, man, it's the message. You know what I'm saying? And last thing, I want to share this so people just know, because the sensationalism part is incredible, like how they depict us and how the word game that they play when it comes to us and our interactions, whether it's family in our privacy or whether it's, professionally in the public. I spoke up at city council a couple years ago, and I knew what I was about to say. I had written it down. I knew exactly what I was about to say, Mom. And I said it. And what I did was I opened up and I said, "Hey, white boy," because the mayor was an old white guy. I said, "Hey, white boy." And then I finished with, "You got that, white boy?" People lost their mind. But what they didn't hear is the meat and potato parts that came after that first white boy and before the last one. You know what I'm saying? They didn't hear that. And because I said, "Hey, white boy," I said, you kind of felt bad when I said that, but you've been calling us that for 400 years. But you didn't have no gun at you. You wasn't getting choked. There was no fire holes. There was no dog biting you. You know what I'm saying? And I said all of these things, but they didn't hear that. Man, I got kicked out of my free office that I was doing tutoring for in the whole nine. So it's a real thing, folks. That's sensational how they do us. Supervising my friend Shaman Walton, bruh, thank you so very much for opening this new series that I'm doing. Any last comments, where the folks can find you? You got upcoming work, your comedy show. What you got going on, man?
Well, one, I just want to appreciate you and say again, and I'm glad you talked about the fact that you spoke your mind and you spoke your truth. Freedom of speech is real, and understand that we should not be biting our tongues as a people. I think you research, make sure you articulate your points and what you want to get across, but it is okay to say things that are going to be controversial. Matter of fact, no change has ever happened without some kind of push and friction. So speak your mind and say it. And by the way, you might get massacred for something you say today, but 2, 3 years later, it becomes the gospel. And that has happened to me most certainly in so many different aspects of not only my political life, but in life and leadership. Things that people don't understand or feel or jump on until a couple of years later. So I'm glad you speak your truth, speak your mind. And we got to call some folks out if we really want to affect change and achieve some equity. I'm gonna continue working on reparations. That's a major focus for me. I have 3 years left in office on the Board of Supervisors here in San Francisco. So keep working on reparations, keep working on building affordable housing and community, keep making sure the small percentage of Black folks that are still left in San Francisco have the opportunity to thrive while we address quality of life issues. I am doing stand-up right now. We got a couple of shows and Tommy T's coming this month, which is January or February. We'll have a couple of shows. I know February 18th is going to be pretty good. My birthday weekend. So stay tuned. I obviously will send you information on what we got going. But my focus really is to be a vessel for my folks, and also to make sure young people know that there's a path to success.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate the work. Appreciate the friendship. You know what I'm saying? I know we don't talk a lot. You busy man, you know what I'm saying? And I respect that. We ain't got to talk every day to have a relationship. You know what I'm saying? Because I know there's work to be done. So again, thank you, bro. Appreciate that and all the words of wisdom that you had. And you know what? What's crazy is in this conversation, there's so many things. And Supervisor talked on it earlier. Like we could have every topic that Mr. Walton spoke on, we could have a whole nother show on, and that could go for hours and hours on end, because that's how many layers to this game that there is. But that's a side note, and I digress. Where I want to go is say this is the reason I did this show, people, on my podcast, Public Comment, is because it is my responsibility, my accountability. It is my position as I occupy this space on this planet to make sure that if I only provide an option to one young Black kid, then I've done my job. But I won't settle for that. I'm not going to settle for that. You know what I'm saying? There are so many like us, for us, and we traveled this road, and we've all traveled this road. Our ancestors traveled this road. But for some reason, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes the stories, the wisdom, the experiences don't trickle down to the young cats like they need to. You know what I'm saying? I don't mind. I love going into juvenile hall, talking to young bros, but I would so much rather talk to them in first grade and second grade and truncate that system and then have that conversation with them when they're again 20 years later down the road, like Supervisor Walton. You see what I'm saying? That's the part what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to continue to do that. And that's why it was important for me to have my friend Shaman Walton on this first show, Black Men Excellence in Action. Folks, that's public comment. That's the show for today. It's your boy Smith. Tap in with me on Facebook. Tap in with me on public comment. I'm on public comment. Tap in with me on Twitter. Tap in with me on Instagram. This is the first one. There's going to be plenty more. Stay tuned. I got some other phenomenal guests coming on, some black men. Once you get this and you see it, share it. Make sure you share it, and then let's see what they sensationalize out of this. Black folks, until next time, you know I love you.
Shout out Bird. Hey. These people do not understand. I'm moving as fast as I can. Sending my prayers to God. He doing whatever he can.